Murder in apartment 502. There are places that seem to carry shadows, even in broad daylight. Apartment 502 was one of them, located on the top floor of a crumbling old building on Fanvin Drive Street. It had been vacant for months. No one wanted to rent it, not since the last tenant died, in what people called an unfortunate accident. But just 2 weeks ago, a young woman named Then moved in. She was quiet, polite, and worked late nights at a nearby bookstore. The neighbors barely noticed her until the night her body was found. It was a Tuesday evening. The rain hadn't stopped since afternoon, and the hallway lights on the 5th floor flickered like they always did. A foul smell began drifting out from apartment 502. At first, people thought it was just something rotting in the garbage chute. But when the stench grew unbearable by the next morning, someone called the landlord. He came with the master key. When he opened the door, a wave of rot and something else, something sour and metallic, hit him in the face. He nearly gagged. Inside, Than's body lay sprawled on the floor, her head twisted at an unnatural angle. Blood had dried in pools beneath her, soaking into the old wooden floor. But nothing had been stolen. Her purse sat neatly on the kitchen table. A silver ring remained on her finger. Even her phone was placed screen up on the bed, still unlocked. Police arrived within the hour. To them, it was a possible robbery gone wrong. Maybe she had interrupted a thief. But then they noticed a detail that didn't fit. There were 2 cups of tea on the table, both half full, still warm. Detective Lamb was assigned the case. He had been with the department for over 15 years and had seen worse. But something about this one itched at him. Whoever came here, she let them in, he said quietly, staring at the untouched teacups. She knew them. That night, the rain continued, and so did the unease. The neighbors talked. She was a sweet girl, said Mrs. Dieng from 501. But sometimes at night, I heard her talking to someone. She lived alone, didn't she? A delivery man claimed he saw a tall man entering the building 2 days before the murder. No idea who he was, he said. He didn't live here, that's for sure. Looked odd, like he wasn't sure where he was going. Another tenant whispered, I heard crying from that apartment the night before they found her. Then they found the drawing, tucked beneath the bed. Police uncovered a crumpled piece of paper, a hand-drawn sketch, done in charcoal. It depicted a tall, faceless figure standing over a girl in bed. Around the edges were symbols, twisted, spiraling marks, like writing but in no language anyone recognized. It was unsettling, and it wasn't the only one. When police searched the closet, they found a box. Inside were several more drawings, all of the same figure, always in a different pose, reaching out, kneeling, standing behind someone who never noticed him. Fan had been drawing this figure for weeks. Autopsy report. There were no defensive wounds, no sign of a struggle. Cause of death, a clean break of the cervical spine, as if someone had snapped her neck instantly. But that wasn't the strangest part. The coroner found trace amounts of soil beneath her fingernails, not the usual kind. This was gritty, reddish earth, mixed with fragments of burnt incense and something else, something metallic. Detective Lamb asked for a lab test. The results came back inconclusive, but the lab technician asked him one thing before he left. Do you believe in ghosts, sir? The landlord confessed something odd. That apartment had always been unlucky. 10 years ago, a man named Vin had lived there. He was found dead after reportedly jumping from the balcony. But rumor had it, his body had been dragged back inside afterward, as if someone didn't want him to leave. No one could explain it. The case was ruled a suicide. A year later, a couple moved and left after 1 month. citing sleep paralysis and hearing chanting from the walls. Since then, the unit had been rented only once every few years, until Then came along. CCTV footage. Detective Lamb reviewed the building's old, grainy security tapes, and there at 2:47 a.m., the night before the body was found, a man is seen entering the building. Tall, wearing a dark raincoat, head down. He doesn't press the elevator button. He climbs all 5 floors by foot. He never looks up. His face is never visible. But here's the part that chilled Lamb to the bone. At 3:18 a.m., the man exits the building, but he's still holding his umbrella. It's closed and bone dry. Than's phone history. Detective Lamb requested a digital forensics team to examine Than's phone. In the Notes app, they found a draft message never sent. If something happens to me, tell them it wasn't a man. It was something else. It came from the wall. I saw it. The last call she made was to an unknown number. 3 minutes long, no voice recorded. Only faint static, and a soft voice whispering in a language no one could identify. Then came the second death, just 3 days after Than's funeral. The landlord, the man who had found the body, was found hanging from the same balcony. No suicide note, but in his room was a hand-drawn charcoal sketch of the exact same faceless figure Than had drawn. This time, it was smiling. An omen or a pattern? Detective Lamb, now visibly disturbed, began digging into old police records. He found 3 other deaths in the past decade that had strange similarities. Victims found with no signs of forced entry, clean neck breaks, symbols drawn somewhere nearby, and always traces of that red soil, all linked to buildings built over an old cemetery, long forgotten. Apartment 500 to set directly over the center of it. The whispering returns. On the 7th night after Than's death, a neighbor swore he saw a light on in 500 though the apartment had been sealed by police. The same night, a janitor quit his job, claiming he heard someone calling his name from inside the locked unit. And then came the message. Detective Lamb, working late in his office, received an anonymous envelope. Inside, another sketch. This time, the figure was standing behind him, drawn with the same charcoal strokes. Below it, in trembling handwriting, "You let him out. The boyfriend and the missing hard drive." The first person to find Than's body wasn't the landlord. It was her friend. Her name was Lynn, 23, freelance illustrator. The kind of girl who always wore oversized hoodies and carried headphones, even when they weren't plugged in. Lynn hadn't heard from Than in 2 days. That was unusual. They texted almost every day, and then never left messages unread. Something felt off. On the night the rain started, Lynn decided to check in. She knocked, no answer. The hallway light blinked above her, flickering as if struggling to stay alive. She pressed her ear to the door and called Than's name. Silence, except for one thing. A click, like the soft unlocking of a latch, from the other side. But the door remained closed. The next morning, after Than's body was discovered, Lynn was the one who screamed. She told the police she hadn't seen or heard anyone suspicious. That was true. What she didn't tell them was this. Than had confided in her just 3 days before her death. "If something happens to me," Than whispered on a rainy afternoon, "it's because of what he's holding." Lynn looked confused. "Who?" Than hesitated. "Nam, my ex." "Nam?" Lynn frowned. "I thought you'd have broke up ages ago." "We did." Then looked away. "But he still has stuff, photos, videos, and the hard drive, the one from college. I thought you destroyed that." "I thought I did too." The hard drive. Small, black, unmarked, it had always been Than's deepest fear. It didn't just hold sensitive images from her past, back when she trusted the wrong people. It also contained a folder no one else was ever supposed to see. A folder titled, DONT Look. Than never talked about what was inside. But once, during a sleepover, Lynn remembered waking up to find Than staring blankly at her laptop screen, eyes wide, face pale. The screen showed a paused video. She closed it immediately when Lynn stirred. That was the last time the drive was ever mentioned until now. The interrogation Nam. Detective Lamb paid Nam a visit. He lived districts away in a cramped studio, barely lit. Computer equipment scattered across the floor. He didn't look surprised when the detective mentioned Than's name. "Yeah, I heard," Nam said, chewing gum with dead eyes. "Tragic. You two dated. If that's what she told you. Where were you the night she died?" "Home editing." "Can anyone verify that?" Nam shrugged. "My cat, maybe." When asked about the hard drive, his jaw clenched. He looked away. "I threw that thing out years ago, useless." Lam didn't believe him. That night, Nam received an anonymous message. "I know what you did to her. I'm coming." Attached was a photo. It showed his apartment window, taken from across the street. At night, Nam checked every lock in the room, closed every curtain, but sleep wouldn't come. Not after he heard scratching behind the wall near his bed. Soft at first, then louder, like nails dragging against concrete. The missing folder. Forensics had taken Than's laptop for inspection. Most of the files were harmless work drafts, music, images of art references. But one folder was missing. The name of the deleted directory matched what Lynn remembered. DONT Look. Even stranger, the deletion timestamp was exactly 3:17 a.m., the estimated time of Than's death. But the deletion wasn't done from her laptop. It was remotely accessed. The friend's lie. Lynn couldn't sleep. She had kept one secret from the police, something she couldn't explain. A week ago, before Than's death, she had helped her transfer some files from the old hard drive onto a backup USB. Than had insisted it be kept secret, not to tell anyone, not even the police. So Lynn hid it in a showbox under her bed. But tonight, when she finally decided to turn it in, it was gone. The box was empty, only a slip of paper inside, with words scrawled in smudged charcoal. He took it back. The curse returns. The next victim wasn't someone involved in the case. It was a data recovery technician. He had been hired, secretly paid in cash by Nam just days before Than's death. Nam brought him the old hard drive, asking for a full restore. The man agreed, but he never finished the job. Neighbors found him in his workshop, mouth wide open in a silent scream, eyes bloodshot, fingernails broken as if he had tried to claw his own face. He left no suicide note. Only one thing was recovered from his computer. A paused video, timestamped 3:17 a.m., frame frozen, showing a grainy black and white clip of Than's room, and something in the corner. A tall, faceless figure watching her sleep. Nam's last video. Just 2 nights later, Nam uploaded a live stream to a private forum. He looked pale, shaky, eyes darting around the room. "I don't know what's going on, but something's following me." He turned the camera toward the wall. Scratches, hundreds, carved words. "She saw. Now you see. Die twice. I thought it was just a ghost story. Just drawings. But he's real. I see him at night, in mirrors, in reflections." Nam held up the hard drive, still intact. "I tried to destroy it. I burned it. It didn't melt. I smashed it. It didn't crack. So I'm going to open it, one last time." He plugged it into his laptop. The screen turned black. And from the speakers, a voice whispered, "You shouldn't have watched. The video cut off. Nam hasn't been seen since." Back to Detective Lamb. 2 weeks into the investigation, and things weren't adding up. One dead girl, one missing ex-boyfriend, one technician with no reason to die, and now, a cursed hard drive that seemed to erase itself from every system it touched, leaving only fragments of images, symbols, and whispers caught on static. Lamb had seen crime. He had seen madness. But this felt like something worse. Like the crimes were just the surface of something much deeper. Then Lynn dreamed of the door. In her dream, she was standing in the hallway outside apartment 502. The door creaked open. Inside, Than stood by the window, her back turned, long hair covering her face. But when Lynn called her name, Than turned around. And it wasn't her. It was the same faceless figure, only this time wearing Than's skin. It stretched across the featureless void like paper, peeling, bleeding, and it whispered, "You kept IT." Lynn woke up screaming. At Than's funeral, few people attended. Lynn came, dressed in black, hollow-eyed. As the casket was lowered, she felt a hand gently touch her back. A woman stood beside her, maybe in her 40s, pale, dressed in gray. Not someone Lynn recognized. "You knew her?" Lynn asked. The woman nodded, then leaned in and whispered, "That hard drive never belonged to her." "What?" "It belonged to the first one. The man in 502. The one who died 10 years ago." "You mean, then?" But when Lynn turned to look at her again, the woman was gone. The pattern continues. Detective Lamb finally retrieved archived reports about the original death in apartment 500 to the man named Vin who jumped, then somehow ended up back in his room, neck broken clean. He, too, had owned a hard drive. It was never found. Rumor said he had recorded something not human, something that shouldn't be seen. And now it's watching again. The final scene of part 2 returns to Lynn's apartment. She's asleep. Her computer, turned off, suddenly blinks on. The screen shows static, then flashes an image. Than, in her room, standing still. Behind her a dark figure, growing taller, head tilted, arms too long. And beneath the image, "Don't look." The man who did Than appeared on camera. "That's impossible," Detective Lamb whispered, staring at the paused CCTV footage. He was in the basement security office of the apartment building, where Than had lived and died. The footage was dated to days before her death. Time code, 11:36 p.m. A man had entered through the main lobby, slowly, like he knew exactly where he was going. He looked tall, mid-30s, dressed in an old-fashioned coat. His face was grainy, but visible enough to register with facial recognition. And that was the problem. The system identified him as Chun-Min Kwong, registered dead 2 years ago. The official record: Chun-Min Kwong was a software engineer who had died in a mysterious house fire. There were no signs of arson. And yet the flames had started into separate rooms at the same time. His charred body was found near the door, no signs of struggle. No one else was home. Case closed. Cremation confirmed. So why, then, did Kwong appear here, walking calmly into a building where someone would be murdered just 48 hours later? Lamb replayed the footage. The man never looked at the camera. He walked to the elevator, pressed floor 5, waited, entered, never looked up. The elevator camera. There was footage from inside the elevator, too. What Detective Lamb saw chilled him. When Kwong entered, he was alone. As the doors began to close, the lights flickered, standard for the old building. Then, something blinked in the corner. A reflection. Like a second face, blurry and stretched, pressed against the mirror wall, only visible for a frame or two. But Kwong didn't flinch. He simply smiled small, knowing. The elevator reached the 5th floor. He stepped out, turned left, toward apartment 502, interviewing the building guard. The night guard on duty remembered nothing unusual. Just another guest, he said. Didn't sign in. Most don't. Did you recognize him? Lam asked. No. But now that you mention it, the guard hesitated. He looked familiar, like I'd seen him before. Not here. Somewhere else, maybe a photo. But there was something wrong with his eyes. What do you mean? They didn't blink. Digging into Kwang's past. Back at the station, Lam dug deeper into Kwang's file. No known relatives. Former girlfriend. Died in a motorcycle crash a month before the fire. Psychiatric history, clean. Criminal record, none. But something stood out. Kwang once worked on a confidential AI surveillance project. His specialty? Facial reconstruction software using thermal imaging. It was experimental, funded privately. The tech was meant to recognize identities even of those disguised or deceased. The program had one eerie nickname inside the lab. Ghost Frame. After Kwang's death, the project was abandoned. Or so they said. The Gravedigger's story. Lam drove 2 hours out of the city to visit the rural cemetery where Kwang's ashes had been buried. The groundskeeper, an elderly man named Tam, barely looked up from his sweeping. Min Kwang, Tam said. Oh yes, I remember that one. Strange burial. Strange how? There was no family. Just 2 men in suits. One had no eyebrows. They gave me the urn and told me not to open it. And you didn't. Tam shrugged. They paid well. I don't ask questions. Did anyone ever visit? Tam looked over his shoulder, then leaned closer. Not during the day. The missing footage. Detective Lam returned to the building and reviewed other camera angles. He wanted to see where Kwang went after he reached the 5th floor. But the hallway camera on that level? Gone. Not just corrupted. Deleted. Manually. Only one file remained untitled, 3 seconds long. He opened it. The screen stayed black, but the speakers emitted a soft, guttural sound, almost like breathing. Then a voice, slow and distorted. He never left. Lin's confession. Lin had been silent since the funeral, barely eating. But when Lam came to see her, she finally spoke. I think then knew. Knew what? That someone wasn't really dead. She reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out an old printed photo. It showed Than and Kwang sitting together at a college cafe. They never dated, Lin said, but she helped him once, with some kind of art project. She said he was obsessed with making people disappear in videos. Said he could make a dead man walk again and screen. You think he used that tech on himself? No, Lin whispered. I think something used him. Apartment 502 again. Against orders, Detective Lam returned alone to apartment 502 that night. The door was still sealed with police tape. Inside, everything felt off, as if time hadn't moved since the night Than died. He opened the closet. Empty. Then the drawers. In the bottom one, wedged behind a loose panel, he found a flash drive, labeled simply, Kwang, Final. Back at the station, Lam plugged it into a secure terminal. It contained a single video file. The video. Static. Then a room. Apartment 502, dimly lit. Kwang sits in front of the camera, face gaunt, hands trembling. If you're watching this, I've already lost, he begins. I thought I could control it, make it mine, but it doesn't belong to anyone. Behind him, a shadow moves just barely. It showed me things, places only the dead should see. I recorded them. I gave it faces. I gave it life. Now it wants yours. He lifts a mirror. In it, the figure appears. Tall, faceless, arms stretching to the ceiling. It doesn't need bodies, just memory. The screen turns black. Words fade in. You died. You just don't know it yet. Was Kwang ever alive again? The medical examiner Ray reviewed Kwang's autopsy records at Lam's request. What they found was disturbing. The body identified as Kwang's in the fire had never undergone full dental confirmation. DNA was compromised due to heat. His ID was assumed based on the belongings found at the scene, meaning it could have been anyone or no one. Was Kwang still alive, or was something wearing his face? The mirror test. Haunted by the footage, Lam set up a mirror in his office. He stared into it for hours. Nothing. Then, at 3:17 am time, every victim had encountered something saw it. In the reflection, his own face blinked 1 second too late, as if someone else was copying him. One frame behind, and smiling. A message from nowhere. Lynn received an email. No sender, no subject. Just one line. Do not let them burn the tapes. Attached was a .zip file labeled Ghost Frame Quarantine. Inside, old logs from Kwang's project, image files, test videos, and notes written in jittery text. It's not a ghost, it's a pattern. Appears after exposure to death. Transmits through memory, image, voice. Infects digital reflection. If it sees you seeing it, you're already marked. Lynn slammed her laptop shut. The last frame. CCTV from the building's lobby on last frame. Time code, 2:01 a.m. Date, tonight. A man stands at the front door. Same height, same coat. But this time, he looks directly at the camera. He raises a hand and waves. The hallway light above him flickers out. The ghost in the detective's dream. Detective Ben hadn't slept well in days. Ever since he reviewed the surveillance footage from the old apartment block, one showing a man who had supposedly died 2 years ago. Something had started gnawing at the edge of his sanity. It began with whispers. At first, he thought it was just the hum of the fridge or distant traffic, but then he started hearing it more clearly. Soft, urgent voices right behind his ear in the dead of night. But the worst part was the dream. It always began the same. He stood in front of apartment 502, holding a flashlight. The hallway was dark, with walls damp and breathing, as if the building itself had lungs. The bulb above him flickered erratically. From inside the apartment came a soft knock. Not a knock on the door, but from within the walls. He would open the door. Blood everywhere. The woman's body was contorted like a rag doll, but her eyes, they were wide open, staring directly at him, not in terror, but accusation. And then came the laughter, not loud, but chilling soft, childlike, as if mocking him. From the corner of the room, a shadow would stretch toward him, and just before he turned to run, a cold hand would grab his shoulder, and he would wake up, soaked in sweat. Night after night, Ben didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in logic, evidence, and procedure. But something about this case felt wrong. There were too many loose ends. A murder with no theft. A victim who might have known her killer. A man who died but returned in video footage. And now the dreams. He tried to dismiss them, but a part of him buried. Primal part knew these weren't just dreams. They were warnings. By morning, his eyes were bloodshot, and his hand trembled as he poured his coffee. His partner, Officer Min, noticed. "You look like hell," Min said, leaning on the desk. "I dreamed of her again," Ben muttered. Min frowned. "The victim, that's not unusual. You're immersed in the case." "No," Ben said, voice low. "She was speaking to me this time." Min raised an eyebrow. What did she say? Ben hesitated. She said, "He's still here. You saw him. Don't pretend you didn't." Min chuckled nervously. Creepy. But your brain's probably just processing everything. Stress does weird things. Maybe, Ben mumbled, but he wasn't convinced. Later that day, Ben returned to the scene. Apartment 502 had been sealed since the investigation began. The building's residents whispered about it, calling it cursed. Some said they heard knocking from inside even when no one was there. Others claimed they saw a figure staring through the window at night. The landlord had moved out. Still, Ben needed answers, and he believed they were here. As he stepped inside, the air grew heavy. Dust particles floated like ash in the sunlight, cutting through broken blinds. The walls were stained, not just with blood but with something deeper. A feeling, like sadness, soaked into the paint. He examined the crime scene again. The blood had dried, the outlines of the body still faint on the floor. Then he felt it, a breeze, but no windows were open. He turned slowly. A shadow moved down the hallway. He drew his weapon instinctively and called out, "Police, who's there?" No answer. He stepped forward, every muscle tense. At the end of the hallway, the bathroom door creaked open on its own. The sound echoed like a scream. He inched closer. Inside was empty. No sign of life. No evidence of anyone hiding. But on the mirror, written in condensation, was a message. "You saw him. Help me." Ben stared at it, heart pounding. He hadn't touched anything. The mirror was dry. That night, he didn't go home. He stayed at the precinct, surrounded by noise, by people, by fluorescent lights. But he still fell asleep, and the dream returned. This time, it was different. The apartment door was open before he reached it. Inside, the victim stood upright, her back to him, her head tilted slightly, like she was listening. Then she turned. Her face was no longer twisted in horror, it was calm, pleading. "He never left," she whispered. "He's wearing someone else now." "What do you mean?" Ben asked, his voice trembling. She stepped closer. "The man you saw in the video, that's not him anymore." The walls began to melt. Blood poured from the ceiling. Suddenly, the floor gave way. He fell deeper and deeper into a darkness so thick it felt alive. When he awoke, the message from the mirror echoed in his head. "You saw him. Help me." Driven by instinct or desperation, returned to the footage from the night before the murder. Frame by frame, he analyzed the clip of the man entering the building. It was 3:12 a.m. The figure wore a black hoodie, his face obscured. But then something caught his eye. A reflection in the glass door. Behind the man, for just a second, another face appeared. A pale, gaunt face, and it was staring directly at the camera. Ben showed the clip to Min. "You think it's someone else following him?" Min asked. "No," Ben said. "I think it's inside him." Min scoffed, like a possession. "Are you serious?" Ben didn't answer. Instead, he dug up the autopsy report of the man who had died 2 years ago. Duke Tran. Died in a car crash. Body burned beyond recognition. Identified only by dental records and belongings found at the scene. But what if? Ben tracked down the mortician who handled Duck Tran's remains. After some persuasion and a bit of paperwork magic, the man agreed to meet. "What do you remember about Duck Tran's body?" Ben asked. The mortician hesitated. "Honestly, strange things." His jaw was locked. "We couldn't open it without breaking it. And there were scratch marks on the inside of the coffin." Ben's eyes widened. "Scratch marks?" The mortician nodded. "We thought maybe it happened before we placed him in. But now that you ask, it was like he woke up in there." Piece by piece, Ben began assembling a picture that made less and less sense logical it felt horrifyingly real. Duc Tran had faked his death, or something had returned in his place. Now, that something was connected to the murder in apartment 502, and perhaps more to come. The victim had whispered in the dream, "He's wearing someone else now." Who was it? Whose identity was being used? Who had been possessed or replaced? Ben's list of suspects narrowed. The ex-boyfriend, the business partner, the fake philanthropist. Any of them could be hiding a darkness not their own. But which one? The final straw came 2 nights later. Ben returned home, exhausted. But as he entered, he noticed something odd. His apartment smelled like old flowers, like funeral incense. He turned on the light. The photo frame on his desk had shattered, and on the wall, written in red, "You're next. Calling the dead and someone answers." Detective High sat stiffly on the floor of the dimly lit apartment. Room 502. The crime scene had long been cleared, but tonight, it would serve a different purpose. In front of him were 2 small devices, an EVP recorder and a handheld spirit box, crackling softly in the silence. Beside him sat Ms. Hung, a spiritual researcher with a reputation for uncovering truths through unorthodox means. Her face was pale, calm, but her eyes scanned every shadow in the corners of the room. Behind them stood Min, the youngest in the investigative team, holding a camera that had been modified to capture infrared visuals. He wasn't a believer, not really, but what they'd seen in the last few days had shaken even the most rational minds. They were here to try something desperate, contact the dead. The theory, as wild as it sounded, came from a security footage review. 2 days before the murder in room 502, a man Pham Van Tal was seen entering the building. He was reported dead 2 years ago. A car accident, no survivors. Yet, the man on the footage had the same face, same gait, and even the scar above his right eye. DNA from a cigarette but he left behind matched. It was him. The case no longer obeyed natural law. So tonight, they returned to the crime scene with a new purpose: summon the truth, even if it came wrapped in horror. Ms. Hung lit a bundle of sage and whispered incantations as the smoke curled around the room. "Focus on the name," she said. "You must not mock or laugh. Only sincerity will invite an answer." They had chosen the name Trun Hong Lam, the murder victim. He had been 32, quiet, a loner, but there were whispers about his involvement in something bigger, something underground. Hai stared into the middle of the room, heart pounding. He didn't believe in ghosts, but the dreams, the voice whispering his name at night, the cold hands brushing his shoulder. He was no longer sure. Ms. Hung pressed the record button. She cleared her throat. "We are not here to hurt or disturb," she spoke clearly. "If there is any presence here, any part of Trun Hong Lam still tied to this place, please give us a sign." Silence. Only the static of the spirit box, scanning radio frequencies for voices. Then, Hai said the name aloud. Trun Hong Lam. The moment he said it, the lights flickered. Men looked up from the camera. "Was that?" Ms. Hung hushed them. "Say it again," she whispered. Hai hesitated, then spoke. "Trun Hong Lam." The EVP recorder clicked. Then from the spirit box, a faint sound. A voice, impossibly soft. "Here." Min's hand trembled. "Did you hear that?" Hai's breath caught in his throat. "Play it back." They rewound the EVP. The voice was clearer in playback, hoarse, distant, but unmistakably human. "Here." Ms. Hung turned pale. "Ask again." "Are you Trun Hong Lam?" Hai asked. No reply. The spirit box only crackled. Then Min gasped and pointed at the wall. The thin drywall panel behind the small altar was trembling just slightly, as if something moved behind it. What the hell? Hai whispered. There was no vent, no pipe, no animal could be back there. And then, without warning, a knock. 3 sharp knocks on the other side of the wall. Min dropped the camera. Hai jumped to his feet. No one move. He moved cautiously to the wall and placed his palm on it. It was freezing. He pressed his ear closer. Why call me? The voice came from behind the wall. It wasn't a mechanical sound. It wasn't feedback. It was a man's voice. Mrs. Hung looked like she was about to faint. That wall leads nowhere. It's a sealed-off closet from the old building plan. There's no entrance. Who are you? I shouted. Silence. Then, not Lam, not dead. The voice sounded sad, resigned. What do you mean? He took my face. They stared at one another, terrified. Min whispered, took his face, is this about Pham Van Tull? The voice responded immediately. I was never dead. The spirit box screeched violently, forcing Min to shut it off. Mrs. Hung reached for her necklace, chanting softly. Something is wrong, she muttered. This isn't a trapped spirit. This is something else. What do you mean? The energy, it's not lingering. It's active, intelligent, vengeful. Suddenly, the room's temperature dropped dramatically. The windows fogged, and on the mirror above the altar a handprint slowly appeared. From the inside, 5 long, skeletal fingers. I stepped back, trying to keep his voice calm. Why are you still here? What do you want? Another whisper from the wall. Justice. The moment the word left the wall, Min's camera began malfunctioning, replaying clips from earlier. Footage from room 502. Footage of a man kneeling over a body. Not Lam, not Tull. Someone else entirely. Half his face was scarred, the other hidden by a mask. Who the hell is that? Min gasped. Mrs. Hung's voice cracked. This is deeper than we thought. Say his name, the wall voice whispered. Say the true name. Mrs. Hung grabbed her notebook. She had jotted down a list of aliases linked to both Lam and Tull, people involved in identity fraud, organ smuggling, and a shadow network tied to multiple dead bodies with falsified records. I scanned the list. One name stuck out. Nguyen Dai Than. He said aloud. The EVP recorder shattered, and from the wall came a horrible, rasping laugh. Found me. Suddenly, the drywall cracked, splitting down the middle, not from pressure, but from inside, as if someone was trying to claw their way out. Min screamed, grabbing the camera. Mrs. Hung pulled a protective charm from her bag and shouted an incantation. The crack stopped growing. Silence returned. Only the faint voice remained. He lives in another name. Find him before he kills again. Then nothing. The temperature normalized. The devices all shut down. And the mirror, the handprint was gone. They sat in silence, hearts pounding, sweat clinging to their backs. Mrs. Hung spoke first. There's no ghost here. Not in the traditional sense. What we heard was a trapped consciousness. Someone who was overwritten. Hai's mind spun. Took my face. So Tull faked his death and used the identity of a dead man to escape. Or, Min added, someone else used his identity. Maybe neither Lan nor Tull were who we thought. Mrs. Hung nodded grimly. This isn't just murder. It's a chain of stolen lives, and someone wants their story told. Hai looked at the wall once more. The voice then knocked the name. One thing was now certain. The dead weren't silent, and the truth wasn't buried. It was watching them, waiting. The two-faced partner, Detective Min, sat alone in the dimly lit conference room. The file in front of him opened to a photo that he had stared at 100 times now. The image showed a blurry frame from the hallway camera to nights before the murder in apartment. 50 to a tall man, broad shoulders, wearing a hat. The timestamp didn't lie. It was recorded 2 years after the man's death certificate had been filed. His name was Hong Vu, a veteran officer, decorated, dead. Or so everyone believed. Min rubbed his temples, glancing up as the door creaked open. It was Lieutenant Bao, his longtime partner. Bao handed him a cup of coffee without speaking and took the seat across from him. "I've been reviewing the security footage," Min said after a moment. "There's more." Vu showed up on another camera, this time in the basement. One day before the murder. Bao didn't react. He just sipped his coffee. Calm to calm. Min continued. "The thing is, Vu had no family, no close friends, except one person." Bao raised an eyebrow. "Who?" Min didn't answer immediately. He flipped the folder shut and locked eyes with him. "You." The silence between them turned heavy. Bao leaned back, chuckling softly. "You think I'm helping a dead man?" "I think," Min said slowly, "you know something you haven't told me." Bao looked at the ceiling, exhaling through his nose. Then, without warning, he leaned forward. "Do you believe in second chances, Min?" The question caught him off guard. "What do you mean?" Bao's eyes darkened. "Back when Vu and I were in the narcotics unit, we botched a raid. A girl barely 15 got caught in the crossfire. It was Vu's bullet, but we both covered it up. Internal affairs never found out. But Vu, he changed after that. Started hearing things. Said the girl followed him in his dreams." Min froze. "I thought he was losing it," Bao continued. "He took time off, moved away. Then the accident car crash, or so the report said." Min whispered, "You don't think he died?" "I don't know what to think anymore," Bao said, voice cracking slightly. "But ever since this new case began, I've been getting phone calls from his number. Empty line. Breathing. Why didn't you tell me this?" "Because I was scared." They sat in silence again. Then Min stood abruptly. "You're coming with me." That night, they returned to the basement of the apartment complex. It had been sealed off after strange EMF readings and unexplained cold spots. Min had acquired a spirit frequency recorder from the paranormal team. He was no longer dismissing the supernatural. As they descended the final flight of stairs, the temperature dropped sharply. Their breaths fogged the air. Bao looked pale. "Something's here," he muttered. They stood in front of the boiler room, same room where the EMF spikes had originated. Min pushed open the rusted door. Inside, the darkness felt thick, like it pressed against their skin. Min turned on the recorder. A low static buzz filled the room. "Vu," Min said firmly, "if you're here, we need to talk." The static hissed, thin, a faint voice, almost childlike. He lied. Min and Bao locked eyes. The voice came again, louder this time. Female. "He let me die." Bao took a shaky step back. "It's her, the girl." The recorder spiked with sudden screeching noise, then silence. Min turned it off. "We need to know everything, Bao, now." Bao nodded slowly, defeated. After the shooting, Vu didn't just hear her. He said she was with him. All the time, whispering, telling him to confess. He came to me, begging we tell the truth. I told him no. I said the past was buried. And maybe that's why he never found peace. "You think he made a deal? Brought something back with him?" Min asked. "I think something followed him through death." Back at the precinct, Min pulled every record from Vu's final days. It wasn't long before he discovered the coroner's report had been digitally altered. Time of death was inconsistent. His body had never been shown to the public. Cremation was rushed. Min contacted the crematory. No records. It was as if Vu had never truly died. He turned to surveillance from 2 weeks ago, just days before the murder. A figure matching Vu's build was caught entering the police archive room after hours. Files on several cold cases had been removed, cases involving victims underage, questionable raids, and covered-up operations from the narcotics division, including the girl. It all connected. Men looked at Bao's name on the old narcotics roster. Vu's two others, all now either missing or dead under strange circumstances. That night, Bao didn't go home. He drove to the old training facility where he and Vu once trained as rookies. Men followed him silently, watching from his car. Bao entered alone, flashlight in hand. Inside, echoes bounced off cracked walls. The place had been abandoned for years. Then men saw it, a figure standing behind Bao. Tall, broad shoulders, hat. He burst into the building, shouting, "Bao, behind you." But Bao stood frozen. The figure turned. It was Vu, dead but not rotting, his skin pale, stretched unnaturally, eyes glowing faintly red, and yet there was grief in them. Men aimed his gun. "Don't move." But the apparition raised its hand not in threat, but in plea. He wouldn't listen. It whispered, "He left me." Bao sank to his knees. "I'm sorry, I should have confessed." A gust of wind slammed the door shut behind men. The temperature plummeted. The walls began to bleed, a thick black ooze seeping from cracks. Whispers filled the air, dozens of voices, some weeping, others laughing. Vu stepped closer to Bao and embraced him. A sudden flash of light exploded outward in silence. When men awoke, it was morning. He was lying just outside the building. Bao was gone. So was Vu. Inside the training facility, there was no black ooze, no signs of struggle, just dust and time. The only trace left was Bao's badge placed neatly on the ground. Back at the station, men filed his report, redacted most of it. No one would believe the truth. The paranormal team examined the footage from Min's body cam. Most of it was static, but for 1 second, just before the flash, a face appeared. Not Vu's. The girl. Young, sad. Behind her, dozens more lost souls with stories unfinished. The paranormal investigator, a woman named Trang, placed her hand on Min's shoulder. "They're not just ghosts. They're echoes of justice denied." The moment you began to uncover the truth, they began to appear. "They want resolution." Min asked quietly, "Do you think Bao is dead?" Trang looked at him. "He might be. But if Vu brought something back, Bao might now be part of it." Min nodded. He had one final question. "Why me?" Trang said, "Because you're still listening." That night, Min sat at his desk, staring at the cold case files Vu had stolen. All connected, all covered up, and each victim now whispered his name in dreams. A new knock echoed at the precinct doors. A new case, a new haunting. But this time, Min was ready, because sometimes the dead don't stay buried, especially when the truth still breathes beneath the floorboards. Cicadas molt a secret identity swap. The rain hadn't stopped for 2 days. The city looked like it was drowning in shadows. Buildings soaked in a gray wash, as if the world had forgotten how to shine. Inside the precinct, Detective N sat with his palms flat against the cold metal table. In front of him was a stack of files, old, forgotten, dust-colored. Files that were supposed to be closed, resolved, buried. But now they screamed for attention. He opened the file marked Nguyen Van Duong deceased, 2023. A mugshot stared back at him. Sharp jawline, narrow eyes, a thin scar beneath the left ear. That same face had appeared in surveillance footage just 3 nights ago, alive, breathing, walking past the hallway outside apartment 502 where Min had been murdered. But Duong was dead, burned to death in a warehouse fire 2 years ago. Autopsy confirmed it. So who had been seen walking around, leaving no fingerprints, no footprints? yet unmistakably him, and turned to the evidence board. Threads of red string now connected the unconnected. A fire, a missing morgue technician, a second set of dental records, and the autopsy signature that looked eerily unfamiliar. It was Trung's handwriting, his own partner, his friend. The next morning, and visited the morgue alone. He needed answers no one else could give. Dr. Huang, the current medical examiner, looked up from her clipboard. Detective Ann, back again? I need access to the records from 2023. The fire case, Nguyen Van Duong. Her face paled slightly. That feels restricted. After the incident with Trung. What incident? Dr. Huang hesitated. He came in one night late, said he needed to verify something, accessed the cold storage, and left without saying a word. Next morning, one of the drawers was empty, the body gone. Duong's body? She nodded. The CCTV was disabled. We assumed someone erased the footage, and no one followed up. Trung was respected. No one wanted to believe, and clenched his fists. I need the truth now. Every autopsy photo, signature, timestamp. I think Trung helped someone fake their death or worse, switched identities with a corpse. Huang retrieved a box from the archive and laid out the contents, and examined each carefully, until his fingers paused on one photo. The corpse labeled Nguyen Van Duong had a tattoo on the left shoulder, a spider with 7 legs. But in a photo taken months earlier, the real Duong had 8. The cicada sheds its skin to become something new. That phrase kept echoing in Un's head as he returned home that night. The idea had become too real. Someone had used a body of fake, a stand-in to disappear, just like a cicada's molt. But for what purpose? His laptop chimed. A new email, no sender, no subject, just a file. He clicked it open. It was a low-resolution video clip. Grainy, static-ridden. At first, nothing. Then the camera flickered. A dark corridor, the familiar hallway of the apartment complex. A man standing at the far end. The face leaned into the frame, Duong. And then behind him, another figure emerged from the dark. Not men, not Trung. Someone else. Someone wearing Un's badge. Un's breath caught. He paused the video and rewound, frame by frame. He examined it and it became clear. The man with Duong that night had impersonated him. But why? He needed help. And there was only one person left who might believe the truth now. Ha, the spiritual medium, had assisted in past investigations. Though often dismissed by skeptics, her insights had once led to the discovery of a buried body in a missing child case, and visited her the next morning. Her shrine was dimly lit, scented with sandalwood and dried herbs. Wind chimes whispered in the stillness. "You've seen a ghost," she said before he could speak. "No." Worse, and replied, "I think I've seen someone come back after dying." Ha poured him tea, her hands steady. "And now the dead walk with the living." He nodded. "There are souls," she said softly, "who don't accept death if the body was never truly theirs. They stay bound wandering, lost. But if a spirit chooses to remain or return, that's when the veil thins. I need to know if Duong ever died." Ha placed 3 joss sticks into the urn and whispered a chant. Then she placed her fingers on a polished obsidian stone. Moments later, her eyes rolled back. There was a switch, she murmured. A man sacrificed not willingly. Someone died in his place, bound in fire, screaming. She gasped, then looked at Anne. The soul that walks now wears another's name. But he is not Duong. He is something else. Un's phone buzzed. A message from a blocked number. "If you want answers, come alone. Basement. Building C midnight." Attached was a blurry photo of Trung tied to a chair, his face bruised, eyes wide, and didn't hesitate. The old building had been abandoned for years, left to rot like a forgotten organ. He made his way through the dark corridors, flashlight trembling in his grip. The basement door creaked open. Trung. Silence. He stepped inside. Chains clinked, a figure slumped in the corner. It was Trung, barely conscious, dried blood on his lips, and ran to him. Trung. Who did this? Trung's mouth opened, voice hoarse. He's not human. Footsteps echoed behind them. A figure stepped from the shadows. It was Duong, or what were Duong's face. You're not supposed to be here yet, the voice said, deeper, colder than memory allowed, and raised his gun. Back away. Duong smiled. You don't understand. This is justice. I died for him. Buried under his lies. Now I wear his life. Trung coughed. He killed Nam Min, all of them. Why? Because I could, Duong said. Because the dead don't fear consequences. And fired, but the bullet passed through him like smoke. Duong laughed, face twisting. I've worn many skins. Yours might be next. The walls shook. Lights flickered. Whispers rose, dozens of voices, mourning, screaming, laughing. I had been right. This wasn't about murder anymore. It was about something far older. A soul that refused to move on. Trung died in Un's arms minutes later. The paramedics found him outside, sitting in the rain. His clothes soaked in blood, none of it his. There was no sign of Duong. Only ashes and a badge that didn't belong to anyone alive. Later that night, and placed the files into a box marked unsolved. But before sealing it, he scribbled a note and slipped it inside. He molted. He became someone else. But souls never forget the names carved in pain. As he turned off the lights, a shadow moved past the window, and from the hallway, just barely audible, came a whisper, not in anger, but in warning. You're next. The rich man behind the mask. By the time the seventh suspect was exposed, Inspector Min realized this case wasn't just a sequence of murders. It was a slow unraveling of something far more sinister, an elaborate web of secrets, guarded by the dead. Now, the whispers pointed to a name no one dared to speak aloud. Mr. Mang Van Bo, a powerful real estate tycoon, philanthropist, and a man with influence that reached from courtrooms to the press rooms. He'd built housing for the poor, donated millions to disaster victims, and helped reform several orphanages. To the public, he was a saint, but to the dead, he was something else entirely. Min sat in his unmarked car outside Bo's opulent villa in District 2, watching through binoculars. The house shimmered under the moonlight, too quiet for a place supposedly filled with family and guards. Beside Min sat Officer Trang, pale and visibly shaking. She'd been the one to decode the final tape from the hidden recorder, found in the burned-down warehouse where the soul-swapping ritual was said to occur. The tape had a name on it, muttered faintly by the victim just before the screaming started. Bo, save me. And then, chillingly, a second voice, deeper, smug, no one will find you. He's already wearing your name. That same night, Bo's private phone received a call. When traced, it was from a number registered under a woman who had been declared dead 2 years ago. The call lasted 6 seconds. No words were spoken, just breathing. Wet, gurgling breathing. Bo didn't report it. Min walked up to the villa the next day under the pretense of revisiting all benefactors who had supported the murdered charity director and their victim in the sequence. Bo greeted him with that polished smile, wearing a silk suit that clung to his perfect posture. Inspector, he said, offering a hand. You look tired. Still chasing ghosts, I hear. Min smiled back, but didn't shake the hand. I'm not chasing, he replied. I think they're chasing us now. Bo chuckled, very poetic. Come, let me show you the courtyard. I just finished renovating the koi pond. My wife says the fish calm the soul. While Bo led the way, Min's eyes darted around. Expensive vases, antique swords, portraits of Bo and his family yet in one of the photos. The shadow between Bo and his son didn't align with the lighting. Min noted it silently. In the courtyard, Bo offered tea. Jasmine, brewed by hand. Min pretended to sip. Mr. Bo, Min said casually, were you aware the man who died in the charity fire had called your number 15 times in the 24 hours? Before he died, Bo's hand didn't tremble, but his eyes narrowed. He was disturbed, Bo said smoothly, always paranoid. He once accused my driver of being a lizard-wearing skin. I ignored his nonsense out of pity. Of course, Min nodded. And did he ever mention someone named Nam, a business partner, a brother? Something flickered across Bo's eyes. Just a second. Nam, he repeated. That name hasn't come up in decades. So it has come up, Min asked. Bo leaned back. Detective, if you're suggesting I'm involved in these ridiculous ghost stories, I must remind you I've donated more to the anti-superstition education program than any living citizen. I believe in science. Min smiled thinly. That's what most murderers believe in too, until the dead show up. That night, surveillance footage outside the villa caught something strange. At 3:12 a.m., all 19 motion sensors on the exterior fence were triggered simultaneously. The cameras captured nothing except for a sudden burst of static. Then, in the courtyard, a koi fish was seen floating belly up. Its scales had peeled back. In Bo's bedroom, a scream shattered the silence. When guards broke the door open, Bo was standing barefoot on the balcony. His silk pajamas were soaked in sweat, and in his trembling hands, he held a photo frame. The frame showed a different photo than earlier that day. It was a photo of a younger Bobo, except the face was blurred, and written across the glass in red. Smeared letters. You stole my life. Bo refused to leave his room for 3 days after that. His wife called a shaman, then a priest, then a psychiatrist. None helped. He kept mumbling one name in his sleep. Nam Nam, I didn't know you were still. That was when Min received a package. Inside, a grainy videotape, postmarked with no return address. It was labeled, The Mask He Wears. The footage showed an underground room, candlelight, a chanting circle, and then Bo, 2 years younger, standing beside another man. The second man looked just like him. Identical. One stood calm, the other screamed, bound to a chair. A voice behind the camera said, the body must be destroyed to free the name. Then fire. Then silence. Min's blood ran cold. Bo hadn't stolen someone's life, had replaced them. There had been two. A twin, a clone, a body double, something worse. What mattered now was this. The man living as Mang Van Bo had taken an identity not his own. And something, perhaps a soul, perhaps justice, wanted it back. When Min arrived at the villa with a warrant, Bo was already gone. The guard said he'd left the night before. He said he heard someone calling him from the walls. One whispered, said Nam was in the pond. They found his phone floating in the koi pond. The fish were gone. Not dead, gone. And scrawled on the stone tiles at the edge of the water, with what appeared to be human fingernails. You can't beat a people. I'm coming back. 3 days later, a body washed ashore at the river behind the old orphanage Bo had once funded. The face was intact. It was Bo. DNA confirmed the match, except dental records didn't align. Neither did the fingerprints. But the face was Bo's. and in his coat pocket was a single Polaroid of two boys standing in front of the orphanage booth, looking exactly alike. On the back of the photo, scrawled in smeared ink, one was left behind. Now the other must join. The public mourned. Tributes poured in. But Min didn't believe a word of it, because that night, just past midnight, he received a call on his private line. The number was blocked. When he picked up, no one spoke. Fina whisper, "Inspector Min, don't trust the next one, the one in the mirror." And then the line went dead. Some say Mang Van Bo was buried with honors. Some say the body wasn't even him. That perhaps the real Bo is still out there wearing someone else's face, avoiding mirrors, haunted not by justice, but by the soul he tried to erase. Min keeps the Polaroid in his desk drawer now, and sometimes, when he looks at it too long, he hears scratching, from behind the drawer, from inside the wood, calling a name not his. The dusty room and the shadow in the mirror. The house sat on the far end of Fu Yen district, draped in a sickly quiet, the kind that even the wind dared not disturb. It had once belonged to Vuong Min Tam, the man now believed to be the puppet master, behind a chain of gruesome, ritualistic deaths. But since the V-Scu switch where he allegedly faked his death and shed his identity like a cicada's shell, his former home had become an abandoned carcass, left to rot under layers of dust and silence. Until tonight, Detective Lin adjusted her scarf as she stood before the rusted gates. They creaked open with a push, as though the house had been waiting. Behind her, Koa, the young forensic investigator, hesitated. "Ma'am, we sure about this? We need to see it for ourselves," Lin said, stepping forward. Inside, the house was frozen in time. Calendars still hung on the walls. Plates sat in the sink with dried residue, and a faint smell of something rotten clung to the air. But one detail stood out among the decay. The door to the upstairs room, at the end of the hall, was sealed shut with chains and an iron padlock. Odd, considering the police had never officially sealed it. "The room's not on the blueprints," Koa noted, eyeing the lock. "Why would he chain it himself?" Lin bent down. "This chain's newer than the rest of the house. Maybe someone wanted to keep something in, not out." Koa pulled out bolt cutters. With a metallic snap, the lock fell. The door groaned as it opened, revealing a dusty room layered in thick cobwebs. But oddly, it wasn't entirely empty. Against one wall stood a tall, antique mirror. It was cracked in the corner and smeared with something red. Lin's heart sank. "Blood?" Koa stepped closer. "Looks dried but fresh enough. It hasn't turned brown." But the unsettling part wasn't the blood. It was the handprint. 5 long fingers, pressed outward from the inside of the mirror. "There's no one else in the house," Lin whispered, staring at the reflection. "We checked every room." Koa's breath caught. "But someone's in this one." Lin leaned in and her blood ran cold. In the reflection, a dark figure stood behind her, a silhouette, just inches away. She spun around. Nothing, only Koa, still frozen at the doorway. Lin faced the mirror again. The shadow was gone, but something new had appeared on the glass. A single word, scrawled beneath the handprint. "M. Don't." Later that night, the mirror was taken to the precinct's evidence room. But the weirdness didn't end there. Every camera placed in the room, whether surveillance or handheld, glitched. Whenever aimed at the mirror, audio recordings would pick up faint whispering, most often in dead languages or reversed phrases. Technicians reported feeling watched or dizzy. One even claimed his reflection smiled back a second too late. But most disturbing of all, each morning after, a new bloody handprint appeared pressed from the inside of the mirror. Lin, now sleeping less than 4 hours a night, dug into the mirror's origin. What she found chilled her. The antique had once belonged to a French colonial officer stationed in Hue in the late 1800s. After his wife committed suicide by slitting her wrists in front of the mirror, he reported seeing her reflection still wave long after her body was buried. He too disappeared a week later. The mirror passed through at least 5 owners, each linked to a sudden or violent death, until it landed in the hands of Vuong Minh Tam. But why seal it in that room? Lynn's question was answered when she reviewed old testimonies. One neighbor had once reported hearing voices in the house late at night, conversations held in whispers, like one person speaking and another replying, always with a delay, like an echo from elsewhere, or from the other side of the mirror. A week later, tragedy struck the precinct. Koa, who had insisted on monitoring the mirror overnight for EMF readings, was found dead in the lab the next morning. No wounds, no forced entry. But his face was frozen in horror, mouth stretched wide like a silent scream. On his laptop, the last recorded footage showed him staring at the mirror, whispering, "I think it's showing me something." Then static. When forensics reviewed the mirror again, they found a new message written not in blood, but carved deep into the glass, backwards. Maybe he never left. The theory exploded across the team. Vuong Minh Tam didn't just fake his death. He left part of himself behind. Or worse, used the mirror as a passage, a veil between the living and the dead. Desperate, Lynn contacted a retired spiritualist once rumored to have assisted on unsolvable cases. Madame Hyen, over 80 years old, with clouded eyes and a soft rasp of a voice, agreed to see the mirror. The moment she entered the evidence room, she stopped. "He's trapped," she said simply, "but not alone." "What do you mean?" "The mirror isn't just a reflection. It's a prison and a window. Someone or something from his past followed him in, and now it watches you." Madame Hyen lit incense and performed a ritual chanting, flicking oil over the glass, sealing it in red cloth. "He used it for his rites," she whispered. "Dark rituals, soul shedding. He transferred pain, death, guilt. Now, the mirror holds it all." Lynn asked what they should do with it. "Break it." Hyen shook her head. "That would only free what's inside, and you're not ready." But Lynn couldn't let it go. She ordered a deep forensic dig into the mirror's frame and backing anything that might offer a clue. What they found was worse than expected. Embedded behind the glass was a thin, dried layer of human skin etched with runes. Ancient, forbidden markings believed to bind a soul into an object. And worse, a fingerprint still matched to Vuong Minh Tam. He wasn't just the owner of the mirror. He was inside it. One rainy night, Lynn returned alone to the house. She had to know what really happened in that room, how many people had died for Vuong's twisted games. She carried the sealed mirror in a box, placed it exactly where it had stood, and waited. Midnight passed. The mirror began to fog from within. Her flashlight flickered. Then, ever so slowly, the red cloth slipped off by itself. In the reflection, Lynn saw herself, and behind her, dozens of shadows. Each bore a familiar face: victims, suspects, and even Koa. But one stood closer than the rest, smiling. Vuong Minh Tam. Except this time she didn't turn around. She just whispered, "You left something behind, didn't you?" And the mirror whispered back, "I never left." The glass cracked just slightly and then all went dark. Back at the precinct, the mirror was now classified under spiritual containment. Lynn never spoke of what she saw. But from that day forward, she avoided mirrors altogether. And in the photo on her desk, her reflection no longer smiled. But in the reflection behind her, Vuong Minh Tam always did. He was dead but still texted every night. They buried him with certainty. Autopsy confirmed he died from a gunshot wound to the head, and his fingerprints matched the charred corpse found in the car wreck. There was no doubt. T-Min, the man behind half a dozen ritual-like killings, was dead. Or so they believed. 3 days after the funeral, Inspector Ha received a text message. "Meet me, midnight, same place. Come alone." It was from Min's number. At first, Ha assumed someone had stolen the SIM card, or it was some sick prank from a journalist. But when he traced the message's metadata, it had come from the very location where the car exploded. The SIM had never been recovered. No activity had been recorded since the night Min dedundled that one text. Ha didn't go. But the next day, a junior officer, Thuan Wo, had been on Min's surveillance team disappeared. The only clue left behind was a text message on Thuan's phone. "You saw me, didn't you? You know I'm still here. Meet me, midnight, same place." From that night on, others began to receive texts. The mayor, who had covered up Min's arrest 2 years ago. The real estate tycoon, whose daughter had vanished after a seance hosted by Min. The psychiatrist who evaluated Min and declared him mentally stable and harmless. They all received the same messages. "I remember, so will you? You owe me something. Your truth is coming." Each one of them vanished shortly after receiving the final message. Tonight, come alone. The media swirled with theories. A cult avenging Min's death. A hacker manipulating psychological terror. Or an inside job to eliminate anyone tied to the botched investigation. But Inspector Ha had a theory no one wanted to hear. He believed that T-Min had never truly died. Not in the conventional sense. Not in the way the living understand death. He returned to the morgue footage of charred body, the melted jaw, the fractured skull. He remembered something strange. The coroner's assistant, during the postmortem, had stepped away mid-process. When she came back, she looked pale and shaken. When asked what happened, she just muttered, "I thought." The corpse moved. No one took her seriously. Now Ha did. He visited the warehouse where the car exploded. It had since been sealed and declared a danger zone. But Ha had the keys. Inside, among the rusted beams and burned-out car frame, he stood alone at midnight. His phone vibrated. Unknown number. "You finally came." His blood turned cold. "You're not supposed to be alive," Ha typed back. "Neither are you, Ha. Not after what you did." The reply came instantly. The temperature in the warehouse dropped. His breath steamed in the air, and a metallic scent wafted in like old blood. Behind him, he heard the faint buzz of flies, then footsteps. Slow scraping, not quite human. He turned. No one. His phone vibrated again. Looked behind the mirror. Confused, he looked around. There was no mirror, just scorched metal and soot-covered walls. But then he noticed it. A broken shard of a car's rearview mirror stuck in the ash. He picked it up. In the reflection, his own face. And behind him, for a fraction of a second, a man's figure. Burned, twisted, unblinking. He turned. Again, nothing. Back at the station, Ha pulled the logs. Dozens of calls had been made from Min's number in the last 48 hours, all to people connected to the original case. But here's what shook him most. The phone wasn't active. It had been disconnected, the service terminated. The number wasn't even supposed to exist in the telecom database anymore. But it did. Worse, when Ha traced the signal route, it wasn't from any cellular tower. The signal source came from underground, specifically from the cemetery where Min had been buried. Ha visited the grave. It was raining hard, lightning flashing in the distance. At the edge of the cemetery, a figure in a black coat was already waiting, umbrella in hand. It was Mr. Trith, real estate tycoon. pale, sweating. "I got the message," Try whispered. "I had to come." "You shouldn't be here," Ha said. "He's dead." "No," Try hissed. "He's in there." He pointed to Min's grave. Before Ha could stop him, Try fell to his knees and began digging with his bare hands. The wet soil splattered, caked under his nails. "I buried the truth with him," Try muttered. "Now he wants it back." Ha tried to pull him away. "What truth? What did you hide?" But before Try could answer, his body went stiff. He looked up, eyes wide, and then froze. Dead. Mouth open, eyes rolled back. No blood, no wound. Just gone. Ha stepped back. His phone vibrated again. "You let him die, like the others. You're next." Back at the station, panic spread. 3 officers quit overnight. One left a note. "He's in the walls. I hear him whisper at night." Another tried to burn Min's original case files, but the paper wouldn't catch fire. As if coated in something damp, were surveillance footage from Min's cell before the fire revealed something everyone had missed. The night he supposedly died, the cameras glitched for exactly 1 minute and 44 seconds. When they resumed, Min was no longer facing the camera. He was facing the mirror on the far wall, grinning. His reflection, however, wasn't grinning back. Ha became obsessed. He dug deeper into Min's past. It turned out, 2 years before his arrest, Min had visited a monastery known for soul-splitting rituals. The monks denied any wrongdoing, but a local legend whispered about a ritual called visku, like the cicada shedding its skin, a way to leave your body behind and enter another. Had Min performed it? Had someone else died in his place? Was Min's spirit now living through the phone? One final clue came from a former inmate, a man who had shared a cell near Min's for 3 weeks. He was transferred shortly before the explosion. His words: he talked to himself at night. Not to himself, no. To his reflection. Like it was someone else. Said things like, "You're ready now. You know what to do when I'm gone." "Did he say a name?" I asked. The inmate nodded. "Yes, he called it Second Skin. Said it'd know where to go." Midnight. Ha sat in his apartment, lights off, waiting. He'd started receiving texts too. Tonight said only one word: mirror. He stared at his bathroom mirror. His reflection stared back, then blinked. He hadn't blinked. His reflection smiled. His phone lit up once more. "It's your turn now." And then, behind him, from the mirror, a bloody hand reached through the glass. The moment of unmasking, and the price of coming back. They thought they knew the face of the killer. For months, whispers echoed through the old district of Bavayaf, bodies found without eyes, of phones ringing at 3:15 a.m., from numbers long disconnected, and of the ghostly figure that seemed to be watching every investigator, but leaving no trace. But no one expected that when the truth surfaced, it would defy every law of nature. Detective Ken stood in the rain, his coat drenched and heavy. In his hand was a report just 3 hours old. DNA from the bloody fingerprint on the mirror in the abandoned house had finally matched someone in the system. Trun Van Dye, deceased 2 years ago. Cause of death: drowning in a quarry during a construction accident. But Ken had seen Dye, not just in photos, had seen the man, in security footage, on the street, in a taxi dashcam recording just last week. And Dye hadn't aged a day. How could this be? "Men," the tech officer muttered as he handed Ken a second folder. "No fingerprints in any database match after 2023. It's like the guy just stopped existing biologically. Yet he moves like us," Ken said under his breath, flipping open the file. "He walks, he talks, he even breathes." That night, they made their move. With evidence gathered from 11 crime scenes, a trap was set, an abandoned train depot, which Dye had frequented according to drone surveillance. Around 1:13 a.m., the door creaked open and in walked a figuretto, calm and unmistakably alive. Ken waited until the figure passed the main beam, then stepped out with flashlight and gun drawn. "Turn Van Dye," he called. "Stop right there." Dye did. He turned slowly, no fear, no anger, just a small, knowing smile. "Detective," he said softly, still chasing ghosts. "Don't play games. You're under arrest for at least 6 murders, possibly more." "I didn't kill them," Dye said, stepping into the light, his face exactly as it had been in the 2022 ID photo. Not a wrinkle, not a scar, not a single trace of time. "You were declared dead," Ken snapped. "I attended your funeral." Dye's smile widened. "And yet here I am." Something cold crawled up Khan's spine. He had interrogated serial killers. He had looked into the eyes of psychopaths. But this was different. The manor thing standing before him was empty. Not emotionless, but detached, as if he were wearing a human face like a mask. As officers closed in, Dye raised both hands, but instead of resisting, he said something strange. "Tell me, detective, do you believe in molting?" Ken blinked. "What?" "Cicadas. They live underground for years. Then, one day, they emerge, leave their old skin behind, and fly into the wilderburn." "You're insane." "Am I?" Dye's smile darkened. "Or are you just not ready to know the cost of being free?" The forensic exam was even more baffling. Though Dye's fingerprints and appearance matched the original identity, his body showed no natural human processes. No dental plaque, no scarring on the lungs, not even evidence of skin oil. Blood samples turned to a blackish-brown sludge within minutes of extraction. Worse, the coroner's digital records started glitching when near his body. Files corrupted. Cameras froze. A nurse reported seeing her own reflection smiling back at her when she looked into Dye's eyes. The fear escalated when the morgue assistant found an envelope left in her locker. Inside, a photo. Grainy, but clear enough. It was taken the night Dye drowned. The strange part, he wasn't alone. In the reflection on the quarry's water was a second figure, dark, shadow-like, without a face. 2 days later, Dye vanished. No broken locks, no camera footage. Just an empty cell and a single, small pile of ash. The prison's internal Wi-Fi system went offline that night, but several officers received anonymous messages around 2 a.m. One skin sheds, another takes its place. And the terror didn't stop there. Detective Khan's phone rang 3 nights later. An unknown number, static. Then a voice, his own voice, whispering, "You're next if you remember too much." He dropped the phone. From that moment, the cases unraveled. Reports flooded in from across districts. People seeing someone that looked exactly like a deceased family member, same age, same voice, standing still under flickering lights or waiting at bus stops past midnight. In one video sent anonymously to the station, a child could be seen pointing at a corner of a hospital room, screaming. "He's wearing grandma's face." The image froze on frame 47, a vague outline, but the distortion suggested more than a persona. It was as if 2 shapes were struggling to overlap, one inside the other. Research into ancient Vietnamese folklore led Ken down a darker path. Legends spoke of Non Dion Hon, a name lost to modern ears, meaning face borrowers, spirits that cannot maintain a presence in the physical world unless they inhabit something that already existed, often by taking the form of those who had died but left behind unresolved vengeance. The stories told of rituals, drowning, suffocating, or burying the host near reflective surfaces, mirrors, water, glass. The reflection would then act as a portal, pulling through the entity, that would assume the identity. The only sign of the swap, the eyes, always a shade too dull, a second too slow. And those who saw the truth well recognized the face, but felt the Lee would be removed forever. Ken visited the quarry. The sun was setting, casting strange shapes on the still water. He stared at the spot where Di had died, or molted. He pulled out the photo from the locker. Two shadows, one rising, one waiting. Then the wind shifted, the air grew heavy. In the water, something stirred. Not a splash, not a ripple, just movement. He looked down and froze. It was his face, in the water, but the reflection blinked a second late. He stumbled back, his breath caught. A voice whispered from behind him, "It's easier to shed skin than to carry guilt." He turned, no one. Back at the station, files started disappearing. Witness statements, autopsy reports. Even Di's death certificate was now incomplete. The footage from the trap in the train depot, corrupted. Khan's team began to suspect each other. Who else had molted? Was the entire investigation compromised? One officer resigned and disappeared the same week. Another was found at home, speaking gibberish, carving mirror symbols onto the walls. When restrained, she said only one thing, again and again: "He's not gone, just wearing a new name." And so it was that the truth became unprovable. Just stories, legends. Ken never filed an official report. He burned the documents, destroyed the photos, and left the force. But every night, at exactly 3:15 a.m., he still received a message on his phone. No number, no name, just 6 words. "I'm wearing you next, detective." The moment of revelation, and the price of the one who came back. They say a man dies only once, but what if he doesn't? What if the man you buried years ago stands at your doorstep, untouched by time, smiling the same wicked smile? For weeks, the mysterious text messages had haunted every survivor of the original case. Each message came from the same number belonging to Quan, the man declared dead and buried nearly a decade ago. He had been the prime suspect back then. Multiple disappearances, blood-soaked clues. But when authorities finally tracked him down, they found only charred remains in a burnt-out cottage. Dental records confirmed it. The case was closed. At least, it should have been. But now bodies were appearing again, mangled, eyes wide in terror, and always after a message. Midnight, don't be late, followed by the chilling, "I'm back." Detective High had spent his entire career chasing shadows, but nothing prepared him for the file that landed on his desk 3 nights ago. Case, Nguyen CRC Tri, found dead in a locked bathroom, phone still clutched in hand. Last message sent, he's outside the mirror. The security footage glitched at exactly 0 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds. Blood analysis, no foreign DNA. The chilling part, Tri had testified against Quan 9 years ago. It was happening again. The turning point came when one of the journalists, Mai Fneng, managed to retrieve deleted footage from an abandoned gas station on Highway 14, where another victim, driver Louis, was last seen. She reached out to High, hands shaking. "Watch this," she whispered, pressing play. The grainy video showed Louis walking to his truck. The timestamp read 11:58 p.m. As he opened the door, a figure stood at the far corner of the loft, half in shadow. No face, no movement, but something ancient lingered in the stillness. Then came the impossible. The camera blinked just once, and in that blink, the shadow was right behind Louis. No footsteps, no transition. And Louis never moved again. Fneng paused the footage. "It's him, isn't it?" Hai didn't answer. They decided to return to the source at the original house where Quan had supposedly died. The site had been untouched for years, overgrown with weeds and folklore. Locals called it Na Kang Bong, the shadowless house. What they found inside defied reason. Everything was intact, furniture barely dusty, a photo on the wall, showing Quan as a young man, except the eyes in the photo had been scratched out. Not once, but again and again, with what looked like human nails. Fneng found something else, a cracked mirror in the upstairs bathroom. "Look at this," she called. It was covered in faint handprints, bloody, yet dry, and as Hai leaned in to inspect, his breath fogged the glass. For a second, just a second, he swore he saw his own face change, older, gaunt, with hollow black eyes staring back at him. They left immediately. That night, the messages escalated. Fn's phone buzzed at 12:01 a.m. "Unknown number. You stood in my room. I stood behind you." She screamed and threw her phone across the room, but it kept buzzing, even from the floor. Over and over, same message, same timestamp. Hai received his at the same moment. "You open the past, I'll open you." He didn't sleep that night. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, a retired forensics officer, Mr. Tat, who had handled Quan's case. "I lied," Tat confessed. "That body, it wasn't him. Too much damage. The DNA match, it was rushed. Someone wanted it done fast." Hai leaned forward. "Who?" Matt's voice cracked. "Everyone. Judges, police, even the families. They wanted closure." "Then who did we bury?" Tet looked haunted, not human, determined to end it. Hai and Fneng returned to the hidden mountain shrine where Quan was rumored to have gone. Before his death, according to whispers, he had once sought a way to disappear forever. What they found was less a shrine, more a hole in the world. Buried beneath the rocks was a sealed wooden box, wrapped in red threads and bone charms. When they cut the cords, a cold wind burst forth. Inside the box, a single photograph of a faceless man, and a journal. The last entry read, "The ritual requires 3 things: silence, fire, and blood. In return, the soul is freed from time, but the price is memory. He forgets who he was, what he did. He becomes what was promised, nothing and everything." Hai stared at the final line. He walks, he feeds, he remembers when called. They were too late. By the time they returned to the city, another 3 people were dead. Each had a connection to the past. Each had received a message. Each had vanished at midnight. There was only one name left on the original list, Mai Fneng. That night, she barricaded herself inside her apartment, every mirror covered. Phone turned off, lights on, candles lit. Hai waited outside in his car, gun in hand, every nerve alert. Midnight passed. 12:01, nothing. But at 12:03, her apartment lights went out. He rushed in, breaking the door open with a single kick. Fneng was gone. Her phone sat on the floor, screen cracked. One final message glowed against the darkness. "She called me." They found her the next day in an alley, smiling, eyes black as ink, no pulse, no heartbeat, but standing. She looked at Hai and whispered, "He's not alone anymore." Then she collapsed and never woke again. Weeks passed, the killings stopped, but the silence was worse. Hai became obsessed, reviewing files, maps, old recordings. Patterns emerged. Every place the killer had appeared was connected to water. Ponds, lakes, wells, as if something traveled underneath. Something ancient. And then it happened. One evening, as Hai stared into the mirror, his phone buzzed, a new number. The message, "You asked who I am. Look deeper." He did. His reflection didn't smile when he did. It didn't blink when he blinked. It just stared until it stepped forward. And then, darkness. The final report described Hai as missing under unexplained circumstances. His phone was found, screen flickering, the last message unsent, still in draft. He is not a man. He never was. He is memory that refuses to die. And so the story goes. In a quiet corner of the city, a new tenant moves into an old apartment. The walls still bear the scent of incense, the mirror still covered. The agent says it's just a superstition the last owner had. But that night, as the tenant unpacks boxes, his phone buzzes. Unknown number. Message. Midnight, don't be late. And somewhere, in a mirror that's not quite a mirror, something watches and waits. Dead twice when he faced himself. The chase had led him back to the place where it all began. The crumbling old quarry on the outskirts of the city where he was pronounced dead years ago. Buried beneath the cold earth. Now, standing in the ghostly silence of that forsaken place, he knew the truth awaited him. But it wasn't what he expected. The sky was heavy with clouds, threatening rain. The wind whispered through the broken stones and twisted trees, carrying with it the distant echo of a scream. He was alone, or so he thought, as he stepped deeper into the quarry's heart. The cracked earth beneath his boots seemed to pulse with a cold energy. Suddenly, from the shadows emerged a figure. The same height, the same face, but eyes wild with despair, mouth trembling as if begging for forgiveness. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then, the double collapsed to his knees, sobbing uncontrollably. "You were supposed to die," the figure whispered, voice cracking. "You left me here forgotten, buried alive." The man swallowed hard. "I'm here now." "No, you were me," the double cried. "And now, I am fading." The quarry darkened as a mist rolled in. The doppelganger's sobs grew louder, turning into a guttural wail. His hands clawed at the ground, tearing at stones and dirt like a man fighting to stay alive. "You can't take my place," he growled. "I belong here. This is my prison." A sudden gust blew through the quarry, scattering loose dust and leaves like spirits released. The man took a cautious step forward, reaching out. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am what you left behind," the figure said, voice low and menacing. "The shadow of your sins. The part of you that never died." Before the man could respond, the doppelganger's face twisted into a horrifying grin. Then, without warning, a thick black smoke enveloped him. It swirled and roared like a living storm. When the mist cleared, the figure was vanished as if swallowed by the earth itself. The man stood alone in the silence. A chill ran down his spine. He looked at his own reflection in a nearby pool of stagnant water. The face staring back was calm but hollow. Something inside him had changed. He wasn't the same. From that day on, those who had encountered him reported strange occurrences. His shadow would flicker oddly in the dark, sometimes moving on its own. His eyes sometimes glowed faintly red when angered. And worst of all, heard the voice, a whisper, low and haunting, coming from inside his own mind. "You cannot escape. You died once and died again." The man's alive, then dead, and now something else began to unravel. Memories blurred between his own and the shadows. Dreams turned to nightmares where he was both hunter and prey, fighting a battle with himself. His reflection in the mirror sometimes smiled back when he did not. Sometimes it screamed when he remained silent. The final test came unexpectedly. On a stormy night, lightning struck a tree near his home. The power went out, plunging everything into darkness. In the flicker of candlelight, the man looked into the mirror. There, staring back, was not him. It was the shadowed part left behind in the quarry, glaring with cold hatred. "Choose," it whispered. "Let me go or let us both be lost." The man reached out, touching the mirror's surface. It rippled like water, Suddenly, he was pulled inside, the world twisting and folding around him. He found himself standing once again in the quarry, the shadow waiting. "You must decide your fate," it said. "Die twice, or live forever as a prisoner of your own soul." He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the sun was rising. He was back at his home, alone. But the man knew the truth now. He was no longer fully alive, no longer fully dead, caught between worlds, between time. And his story was far from over. Truth or abyss, who was really alive? The city slept uneasily, shadows stretching longer as rumors whispered through the streets, like cold winds from a forgotten grave. Detective High, thought missing for months, suddenly reappeared walking into the precinct as if nothing had happened. His eyes were the same, but something in his gaze unsettled even the most seasoned officers. "Where have you been?" asked his partner, Mai Fneng, voice shaking. She had survived the nightmare, but was haunted still. Hai gave a faint smile. "I've been somewhere between." But questions plagued everyone. Had Hai truly vanished, or was this something else wearing his face? Days passed, and the strange occurrences resumed. Phones rang at midnight, lights flickered, and shadows moved against the natural flow of time. One night, Hai arrived late to the station. The lights were dimmed, the office eerily quiet. Suddenly, a voice called from the darkness. "You're not the only one back." From behind a curtain stepped another figure looking exactly like Hai. But his eyes were voids, empty and unblinking. Panic erupted. The officers scattered. The two Hais faced each other, mirrors of life and death, past and future. "Which one of us is real?" one whispered. "Does it even matter?" the other replied, voice hollow. As the city spiraled into chaos, the line between life and death blurred. Every victim, every disappearance traced back to that one question: who is truly alive? Was the living man a ghost, haunting the world of the living? Or was the dead man merely pretending to be gone, waiting to reclaim what he lost? The answer, if there ever was one, remained buried in the shadows, waiting for the next victim brave enough to face the abyss. The end of the spiral, truth, curse, or salvation. The city's restless nights had finally reached a climax. The lines between the living and the dead, between reality and nightmare, had blurred into a haunting fog that refused to lift. Detective Hai's return was the beginning of the end, and no one knew which side of the veil he belonged to anymore. It was a rainy evening when the final confrontation began. Hai, haunted by his own shadow self, followed a twisted trail that led back to the very heart of the old quarry place, where the cycle of death and rebirth had begun. Accompanying him was Mai Fneng, her eyes filled with determination, though her soul carried scars of the past months. Together, they stepped into the darkness where the boundaries of time and space crumbled like dry earth. As they entered the quarry, the air grew thick and cold. The walls seemed to whisper secrets in a language forgotten by man. From the shadows, the silhouette of a figure emerged, the embodiment of the curse itself, the one who came back. The creature was neither fully man nor spirit. Its eyes burned with an unnatural fire, and its presence twisted the air with a suffocating dread. "You sought the truth," it hissed. "Now face the price." Before they could react, the world shifted. The ground opened beneath them, pulling them into a vortex of memories, voices, and faces. They were caught in the timeless limbo of the Skuthot shack, the cicada shedding its shell. It was the endless cycle of death and rebirth, of souls trapped between worlds, forever repeating the dance of torment. In this strange realm, they saw everything. The faces of victims who never found peace, the twisted desires and betrayals that chained the souls, The dark ritual that fractured time itself, an ancient curse born from greed, lies, and a desperate wish to escape death's grip. Hien Feng realized the truth. This was no ordinary haunting. It was a cosmic punishment, a price for defying the natural order. Yet, amid the despair, a faint light flickered. The doppelganger shadow that had haunted Hai was not entirely evil. It was a fragment of a broken soul yearning for redemption. With Fen's courage and Hai's will, they confronted the curse, offering not hatred but understanding. They recited words from the lost journal, found long Agath words of release. Slowly, the darkness receded. They awoke back in the quarry, drenched in rain, but free from the crushing weight of the past. The spirits whispered their thanks before fading into the light. Hien Feng looked at each other, exhausted but alive. In the weeks that followed, the city felt lighter, as if a long-standing shadow had lifted. Phones no longer rang at midnight. The mirrors lost their haunted reflections. The shadows stopped moving on their own. But some mysteries remained. The line between life and death, though blurred, still existed. The curse had ended for now. But in the quiet moments when the wind stirred the leaves and the night grew still, a faint whisper could be heard. Beware the Skuthot shack, the cicada that escapes its shell, only to be reborn. And so, the story ended. Or maybe just began anew. Thank you for joining this journey through fear, mystery, and the thin veil between worlds. Remember, Earth's greatest horror is often not what lurks in the shadows, but what hides within ourselves.